The shattered wine glass at my feet seemed to mock me, its crimson contents seeping into the pristine white carpet like a growing stain on my perfect life. I stood frozen, staring at Owen's phone clutched in my trembling hand, the incriminating text messages glaring back at me. "Emily, honey, what's wrong?" Owen's voice floated from the kitchen, concern lacing his words. The sound of his footsteps approaching snapped me out of my daze. I looked up, meeting his eyes as he entered our living room. "Who's Samantha?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Owen's face paled, his eyes darting between me and his phone. She's just a coworker," he stammered, taking a step towards me. "A coworker you're sleeping with? You're sleeping with?" I spat, anger rising in my chest. "Don't lie to me, Owen. I've seen the messages." He ran a hand through his hair, a nervous habit I once found endearing. Now it only fueled my rage. "Emily, I can explain." "Explain what?" I cut him off, my voice rising. "Explain how you've been cheating on me, how you've been lying to my face for God knows how long." Owen reached out, trying to take his phone back, but I jerked away. "It's not what you think," he pleaded. "Samantha and I, it's complicated." I laughed bitterly. "Complicated? That's rich. What's so complicated about keeping your vows, Owen?" A knock at the door interrupted our confrontation. Owen's eyes widened in panic. "That's probably my mother," he said, glancing at his watch. "She mentioned stopping by today." "Perfect timing," I muttered, marching towards the door. I flung it open, revealing Mary's surprised face. "Emily, dear, I hope I'm not interrupting anything," she chirped, her eyes taking in my disheveled appearance and tear-stained cheeks. "Not at all, Mary," I replied, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "You're just in time for the show." Mary stepped inside, her brow furrowed in confusion. "What's going on? Owen, honey, is everything all right?" Owen appeared behind me, his face a mask of guilt and fear. "Mom, now's not a good time." "Your son's been cheating on me," I announced, cutting him off. "With a coworker named Samantha. Isn't that right, Owen?" Mary's eyes widened, darting between Owen and me. "Oh, dear," she murmured, wringing her hands. "I'm sure there's been some misunderstanding. Owen would never." "There's no misunderstanding," I interrupted by thrusting Owen's phone towards her. "It's all right here in black and white." Mary took the phone hesitantly, her eyes scanning the messages. Her face paled as she read, and I felt a twisted sense of satisfaction watching her perfect image of her son crumble. "Owen," she whispered, looking up at him with disappointment etched across her face. "How could you?" Owen's shoulders slumped in defeat. "I'm sorry," he mumbled, unable to meet either of our gazes. I turned to Mary, my anger finding a new target. "Did you know about this? Did you help him cover it up?" Mary's eyes flashed with indignation. "Of course not. I would never condone such behavior. Owen, I raised you better than this." As they bickered, I felt a strange sense of detachment wash over me. This wasn't how I imagined spending my Thursday evening. I should be curled up on the couch with Owen, planning our weekend getaway. Instead, I was standing in the midst of a family drama I never asked for. "I need some air," I announced, grabbing my keys from the side table. Neither Owen nor Mary seemed to hear me, too engrossed in their argument. I slipped out the door, the cool evening air a welcome relief on my flushed skin. As I walked towards my car, I couldn't help but wonder how I'd missed the signs. How long had this been going on? And more importantly, what was I going to do now? I stared at the glossy brochure in my hands, my stomach churning with a mix of excitement and unease. The penthouse suite on the 40th floor looked breathtaking, with floor-to-ceiling windows offering panoramic views of the city. Owen's enthusiasm was infectious as he pointed out the amenities. "Can you imagine, Em? Our own private terrace, a state-of-the-art gym, and a concierge at our beck and call," he gushed, his eyes sparkling with desire. I nodded, trying to match his excitement. "It's beautiful, Owen, but can we afford it? It seems extravagant." Owen waved his hand dismissively. "Don't worry about that. With your promotion and my new clients, we'll be fine. We deserve this, Em. After everything we've been through, don't you think we should treat ourselves?" The mention of our recent troubles made me wince. It had been 2 months since I discovered Owen's affair, and we were still piecing our marriage back together. Part of me wondered if this lavish condo was his way of making amends. "I don't know." I hesitated. "Maybe we should look at our finances first?" Owen's smile faltered for a moment before he plastered it back on. "Of course, darling. Why don't we go over the numbers tonight?" That evening, I spread our financial documents across the dining table. As I pored over bank statements and credit card bills, a sinking feeling settled in my gut. "Owen," I called out, my voice tight, "can you explain these charges?" He sauntered over, peering at the statement I was pointing to. "Oh, those? Just some business expenses. Don't worry about it." I frowned, noting the frequency and amounts of the charges. Business expenses at high-end restaurants and hotels, and why are they on our personal card? Owen shifted uncomfortably. "It's complicated, Em. Sometimes I need to wine and dine clients. It's part of the job." "And the hotel charges?" I pressed, my suspicion growing. "Late nights, you know how it is," he mumbled, not meeting my eyes. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my temper in check. "Owen, be honest with me. How much debt are we in?" He hesitated before sighing heavily. "It's substantial, but it's temporary, I swear, once these deals come through." "How much?" I interrupted, my voice sharp. Owen mumbled a number that made my blood run cold. It was more than double what I had feared. "How could you let it get this bad?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. "I was trying to provide for us, to give you the life you deserve," Owen pleaded. "With your new salary, we can easily manage the payments and afford the new condo." I stared at him, realization dawning. "My salary? You were counting on my money to bail us out?" Owen had the decency to look ashamed. "Not bail us out exactly, but your promotion came at the perfect time. We can start fresh in a new place without all this baggage." "Baggage that you created," I snapped. "And now you expect me to clean up your mess?" "We're a team, aren't we?" Owen asked, reaching for my hand. "What's mine is yours, and what's yours is mine. Isn't that what marriage is about?" I pulled away, anger bubbling up inside me. "Marriage is about trust and honesty, Owen, two things you seem to have forgotten." "Emily, please," he begged. "I know I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to make things right. This new condo could be a fresh start for us." I stood up, gathering the financial documents. A fresh start built on lies and debt? No, thank you. As I turned to leave the room, Owen called out, "Where are you going?" "To call my parents," I replied coldly. "I need some honest advice for a change." I slammed the door to our bedroom, my hands shaking as I dialed my mother's number. As the phone rang, I couldn't help but wonder how I'd been so blind. First the affair, and now this financial disaster. What other secrets was Owen hiding? The sound of my mother's warm, familiar voice answered, "Emily, sweetheart? Is everything okay?" I took a deep breath, tears stinging my eyes. "No, Mom, everything is not okay. I need your help." The incessant ringing of the doorbell jolted me awake. I groaned, glancing at the clock, 7:30 a.m. on a Saturday. Who could it be at this ungodly hour? I stumbled out of bed, wrapping my robe tightly around me. Owen was still fast asleep, oblivious to the noise. As I approached the door, I heard a familiar voice calling out. "Owen, Emily, it's Mom. Open up, dears." My heart sank. Mary. Of course it had to be Mary. I opened the door, plastering on a fake smile. "Good morning, Mary. What a surprise." Mary bustled past me, arms laden with shopping bags. "Oh, Emily, dear, you look dreadful. Are you not sleeping well?" Before I could respond, she was already making her way to the kitchen. "I thought I'd pop by and make you two a proper breakfast. Owen works so hard, he needs a good meal to start his day." I bit back a retort about Owen's hard work and followed her. "That's thoughtful of you, Mary." "But really, you didn't have to." "Nonsense," she interrupted, unpacking groceries. "It's no trouble at all. Now, be a dear and wake Owen, will you?" Reluctantly, I went to rouse my husband. Owen stumbled into the kitchen, looking confused but pleased to see his mother. "Mom, what are you doing here?" Mary beamed at him. "Just taking care of my boy. Sit down. Breakfast will be ready soon." As we ate, Mary chattered away, mostly addressing Owen and occasionally throwing a pointed comment my way. "Emily, dear, don't you think you should cut back on the carbs? That promotion of yours must be quite stressful." I gritted my teeth, forcing a smile. "I'm managing just fine, thank you." Owen, oblivious to the tension, piped up. "Oh, Mom, did I tell you? We're thinking of moving to a new condo." Mary's eyes lit up. "Really? How wonderful. You know, I've been thinking of downsizing myself. Perhaps I could move in with you too? Just temporarily, of course." I nearly choked on my coffee. "What?" Owen looked thoughtful. "That's not a bad idea, actually. What do you think, Em?" I stared at them both, incredulous. I think I need some air. Excuse me." I fled to the balcony, my mind reeling. How had we gone from financial troubles to potentially living with my mother-in-law in the span of a week? A few minutes later, Owen joined me. "Hey, you okay?" I turned to face him, struggling to keep my voice level. "Owen, we can't afford that new condo, let alone have your mother move in with us." He frowned. "But with your promotion." "My promotion doesn't magically erase our debt," I snapped. "And I'm not using my hard-earned money to finance your mother's retirement." Owen's face hardened. "She's family, Emily. We can't just abandon her." "And what about my family?" I countered. "My parents could use help too, but you don't see me suggesting they move in." "That's different," Owen muttered. How is it different?" Before Owen could respond, Mary's voice floated out from the kitchen. "Everything all right out there, dears?" Owen called back. "Just fine, Mom. Emily and I are just discussing some details." I lowered my voice. "Owen, this has to stop. Your mother can't keep barging into our lives like this." He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "I know she can be a bit much, but she means well. Can't you try to get along with her? For me?" I stared at him, a realization dawning. "You're always going to take her side, aren't you?" Owen's silence was all the answer I needed. I pushed past him, heading back inside. "Mary," I said, my voice tight with forced politeness, "thank you for breakfast, but Owen and I have some private matters to discuss. Perhaps it's best if you head home now." Mary looked affronted. "Well, I never. Owen, are you going to let her speak to me like that?" Owen stood frozen, caught between his wife and his mother. The tension in the room was palpable. As I watched Owen's conflicted face, a cold certainty settled in my chest. This wasn't just about Mary's visit or the condo anymore. This was about the future of our marriage, and suddenly that future looked very uncertain indeed. I stared at the unfamiliar floral arrangement on our coffee table, my jaw clenched. This was the third time this week I'd come home to find Mary had tidied up our condo. The scent of lavender air freshener assaulted my nostrils, a far cry from the citrus scent I preferred. "Owen?" I called out, my voice tight with frustration. He appeared from the kitchen, a guilty look on his face. "Hey, Em? You're home early? Where's your mother?" I asked, already knowing the answer. Owen shifted uncomfortably. "She just left. She brought over some casseroles for us and thought she'd help out a bit." I took a deep breath, trying to calm my rising anger. "Owen, we talked about this. Your mother can't keep coming over unannounced and rearranging our home." "She's just trying to help, Emily," Owen defended. "You've been so busy with work lately," she thought. "She thought what?" I snapped. "That I can't manage my own home? That I'm not good enough for her precious son?" Owen's face hardened. "That's not fair. Mom's been nothing but kind to you." I laughed bitterly. "Kind? Is that what you call her constant criticism and meddling?" Before Owen could respond, the front door opened, and Mary waltzed in, carrying another bag of groceries. "Oh, Emily dear, you're home," she exclaimed with false cheer. "I forgot to bring over the organic kale I bought for you. I know how much you love your healthy foods." I bit my tongue, knowing full well I'd mentioned my dislike for kale multiple times. "Thank you, Mary, but that wasn't necessary." Mary waved her hand dismissively. "Nonsense. Someone has to make sure you two are eating properly. Owen works so hard he needs proper nutrition." I felt my temper flare. "And what about my work, Mary? Do you think I just sit around all day?" Mary's smile faltered for a moment. "Well, of course not, dear. But let's be honest, Owen's job is much more demanding. It's only natural that you should pick up the slack at home." I stared at her, incredulous. "Excuse me?" Owen stepped in, sensing the tension. "Mom, maybe now's not the best time." "No, Owen," I interrupted. "I want to hear what your mother has to say. Please, Mary, enlighten me about my responsibilities." Mary's eyes narrowed. "Well, if you must know, I think you could be doing more to support Owen. A good wife puts her husband's needs first. Your career should come second to your family." I felt as if I'd been slapped. "My career is what's keeping this family afloat," I hissed, thinking of the mountain of debt Owen had accrued. "Emily," Owen warned, but I was beyond caring. "Do you have any idea how hard I've worked to get where I am?" I continued, my voice rising. "I am not about to give that up to become some 1950s housewife fantasy," Mary gasped, clutching her pearls. "Owen, are you going to let her speak to me like this?" I turned to Owen, daring him to side with his mother. To my dismay, he remained silent, his eyes darting between us. "You know what?" I said, grabbing my keys. I can't do this right now. I'm leaving. Emily, wait. Owen started, but I was already out the door. I drove aimlessly, tears blurring my vision. How had my life come to this? My once loving husband, now a stranger. My home, no longer my own, and my achievements belittled at every turn. As I pulled into a parking lot to compose myself, my phone buzzed. It was a text from Owen. Mom's staying for dinner. Please come home so we can talk. I stared at the message, a cold realization settling in my chest. This wasn't just about Mary's visit or her hurtful comments. This was about my future, our future. And suddenly I knew I had a decision to make. With shaking hands, I dialed a number I should have called weeks ago. Dad, I said when he answered. I need your advice. I think I might be ready to leave Owen. I smoothed down my dress for the 100th time, nervously glancing at the clock. My parents would be here any minute, and I was determined to make this visit perfect. After weeks of tension with Owen and Mary, I needed the comfort of my family. The doorbell rang, and I rushed to answer it, a genuine smile spreading across my face as I saw my parents. Mom! Dad! I exclaimed, pulling them both into a tight hug. Emily, sweetheart, my mother Ruth said warmly. It's so good to see you. Father John squeezed my shoulder. You look tired, Pumpkin. Everything okay? Before I could respond, Owen appeared behind me. Ruth, John, welcome, he said, his tone polite but cool. As we settled in the living room, I couldn't help but notice Owen's tense posture. He'd been reluctant about this visit from the start, but I'd insisted. I needed my parents here, needed their grounding presence. So tell us about this new condo you're thinking of buying, my father said, trying to break the ice. Owen perked up at this. It's fantastic, John. Top-of-the-line appliances, a view of the city skyline. And way out of our budget, I interjected, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. An uncomfortable silence fell over the room. My mother, ever the peacemaker, quickly changed the subject. Emily mentioned you've been busy at work, Owen. How's that going? Owen launched into a long-winded explanation of his latest business deals, peppered with jargon I knew my parents wouldn't understand. I watched their faces, seeing the confusion and growing discomfort. Well, my father said when Owen finally paused for breath, sounds complicated. In our line of work, we prefer to keep things simple and honest. Owen's eyes narrowed. And what line of work is that again? Farm management, wasn't it? I tensed, recognizing the condescending tone in Owen's voice. Property management, actually, I corrected. Mom and Dad have built a successful business from the ground up. Right, Owen scoffed, managing pig pens and chicken coops. Very impressive. Owen, I gasped, shocked at his rudeness. My father's face hardened. Now listen here, young man. But Owen was on a roll. No, you listen. I'm tired of pretending that your quaint little country life is somehow equal to what Emily and I have built here. We're in a different league, and it's time you understood that. How dare you? I sputtered, anger rising in my chest. My parents have worked harder than you ever have. Owen turned on me, his eyes flashing. Oh, please. They wouldn't know real work if it bit them on their overalls. And you're not much better, Emily. Always going on about your precious career, as if pushing papers around is somehow more important than what I do. The room fell silent, the weight of Owen's words hanging heavy in the air. I looked at my parents, seeing the hurt and anger in their eyes, and something inside me snapped. Get out, I said, my voice low and dangerous. Owen blinked, taken aback. What? I said. Get out, I shouted, standing up. Get out of this house, and don't you dare come back until you're ready to apologize to my parents and to me. Owen stared at me in disbelief before storming out, slamming the door behind him. As the echo of the slam faded, I collapsed onto the couch, tears streaming down my face. My parents rushed to my side, enveloping me in a comforting embrace. Oh, sweetie, my mother murmured, stroking my hair. I'm so sorry. Through my tears, I looked up at them. I can't do this anymore, I whispered. I think my marriage is over. My father nodded solemnly. Whatever you decide, we're here for you, Pumpkin, always. As I sat there, surrounded by the unconditional love of my parents, I felt a strange mix of sorrow and relief. The life I had built with Owen was crumbling around me, but for the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe again. I took a deep breath, wiping away my tears. I need to leave him, I said, the words feeling both terrifying and liberating. Will you help me? My parents exchanged a look before turning back to me with determined expressions. "Of course," they said in unison. "We're family. We'll get through this together." In that moment, I knew my life was about to change dramatically. But with my parents by my side, I felt ready to face whatever came next. My hands shook as I zipped up the last suitcase. The bedroom, once a sanctuary, now felt suffocating. Owen's pleading voice echoed from the living room, but I steeled myself against it. There was no going back now. "Emily, please," Owen begged as I wheeled my luggage out. "We can work this out. I'll do better, I promise." I turned to face him, my resolve firm. "No, Owen, we're past that point. Your behavior, your lies, your disrespect for my family, it's too much. I'm leaving." His face contorted with anger. "You can't just walk out on our marriage. What about everything we've built together?" I laughed bitterly. "Built together? You mean the mountain of debt you've hidden from me? The life you've constructed on lies and manipulation?" Owen's eyes widened. "How did you?" "I hired a financial investigator," I cut him off. "I know everything, Owen. The gambling debts, the secret credit cards, even the money you've been funneling to your mother." He paled, stumbling back. "Emily, I can explain." "Save it," I snapped. "I'm done with your explanations and excuses. I've already spoken to a lawyer. You'll be hearing from them soon." As if on cue, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my parents standing there, concern etched on their faces. "Ready to go, sweetheart?" my father asked, eyeing Owen warily. I nodded, grateful for their support. As my father began loading my bags into their car, Owen made one last desperate attempt. "Ruth, John," he pleaded, "surely you can see this is just a misunderstanding. Help me talk some sense into Emily." My mother's eyes flashed with anger. "The only misunderstanding here is that we ever thought you were good enough for our daughter." Just then the elevator dinged and Mary stepped out. Her eyes widened as she took in the scene. "What's going on here? Owen, why are there suitcases?" "Your son's marriage is over, Mary," I said coldly. "I suggest you start looking for a new place to meddle." Mary's face reddened. "How dare you? Owen, are you going to let her speak to me like that?" Owen looked torn, his gaze darting between his mother and me. In that moment, I saw our entire marriage laid bare, his inability to stand up to his mother, his constant need for validation, his disregard for my feelings and aspirations. "You know what?" I said, a sudden calm washing over me. "You two deserve each other. Enjoy your codependent, financially ruinous life together." As I turned to leave, Owen grabbed my arm. "Emily, wait! You can't just throw away 5 years of marriage." I wrenched my arm free. "Watch me." With that, I walked out of the condo, my parents flanking me protectively. As we rode the elevator down, I felt a mix of emotions, relief, sadness, and a twinge of fear for the unknown future ahead. In the parking garage, as my father loaded the last of my bags, I heard rapid footsteps. Owen came running up, out of breath and desperate. "Emily, please," he gasped. "I'll do anything. Why? I'll go to counseling. I'll cut ties with my mother. Anything you want." For a brief moment, I hesitated. 5 years of memories flashed through my mind, the good times, the laughter, the dreams we'd shared. But then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the constant belittling of my achievements. I took a deep breath and looked Owen in the eye. "It's too late, Owen. I deserve better, and I'm going to find it, without you." As we drove away, I watched Owen's figure grow smaller in the rearview mirror. Tears streamed down my face, but I felt a strange sense of lightness. The road ahead was uncertain, but for the first time in years, it was mine to choose. "You okay, Pumpkin?" my father asked gently. I wiped my eyes and managed a small smile. "No," I admitted, "but I will be." As we turned onto the highway, leaving behind the life I'd known, I realized this wasn't just an ending. It was a beginning, my beginning. And despite the pain and uncertainty, I was ready to embrace it. I sat at my parents' kitchen table, clutching a mug of tea as if it were a lifeline. The familiar sense of home surrounded me, but they did little to calm the storm raging inside. "Emily, sweetheart," my mother said gently, placing a hand on my arm. "You need to eat something." I shook my head, my throat tight. "I can't, Mom. I can't believe this is happening." My father cleared his throat, his weathered face creased with concern. "Pumpkin, we need to talk about what comes next, the divorce proceedings, your living situation." At the word divorce, I felt a fresh wave of pain wash over me. How did I let it get this far, Dad? How did I not see what Owen was really like? Love can blind us, my mother said softly, but you're seeing clearly now, and that's what matters. Just then my phone buzzed. Another text from Owen. I'd been ignoring them for days, but curiosity got the better of me. I unlocked the screen and gasped. What is it? My father asked, alarmed. Owen, I choked out. He's threatening to contest the divorce. Says he'll drag my name through the mud, claim I abandoned him. My parents exchanged a look I couldn't quite decipher. My mother took a deep breath. Emily, there's something we need to tell you, something that might help. I looked up, confused. What do you mean? My father leaned forward, his voice low and serious. We're not just small-town property managers, sweetheart. Our company, it's much bigger than that. My mind reeled. What are you talking about? We own and manage properties all over the state, my mother explained, including the condo complex where you and Owen have been living. I stared at them, stunned. You're our landlords? My father nodded. We kept it quiet because we wanted you to make your own way. But now, with everything that's happened, we can help, my mother finished. Owen hasn't been paying rent for months. We have grounds to evict him. I felt like the room was spinning. Why didn't you tell me this before? We wanted to protect you, my father said, but now we see that keeping secrets, even with good intentions, only causes pain. As the reality of their revelation sank in, I felt a mix of emotions, shock, betrayal, but also a glimmer of hope. So you're saying we have leverage? They nodded in unison. More than that, my mother added. We have the truth on our side. Just then my phone rang. Owen's name flashed on the screen. With trembling hands, I answered and put it on speaker. Emily, Owen's voice crackled through. I'm giving you one last chance. Come home, or I swear I'll make your life hell. I'll tell everyone how you abandoned me, how you... That's enough, Owen. My father's voice boomed, cutting him off. This is John. You might want to rethink your strategy, son. There was a moment of stunned silence. Mr. Johnson? What are you? We know everything, Owen, my mother chimed in. The unpaid rent, the financial mismanagement, it's over. I took a deep breath, finding strength in my parents' support. Owen, listen carefully. You have 24 hours to vacate the condo. If you contest this divorce or try to smear my name, we'll take legal action. Do you understand? The line went silent for a long moment. Then, in a defeated voice, Owen muttered, I understand. As I ended the call, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders, but it was quickly replaced by a new burden, the realization that my life was about to change dramatically once again. What now? I asked. Looking at my parents, my father squeezed my hand. Now we fight, together. As I sat there, surrounded by the love and strength of my family, I realized that this wasn't just about ending my marriage. It was about reclaiming my life, my dignity, and my future. And for the first time in months, I felt ready to face whatever came next. Okay, I said, straightening my shoulders. Let's do this. I stood outside the condo, my heart pounding. My parents flanked me, their presence a comforting shield against the storm I knew was coming. With a deep breath, I knocked on the door. Owen answered, his face a mask of desperation. Emily, thank God you're here. I knew you'd come back. Save it, Owen. I cut him off, pushing past him into the condo. My eyes widened as I took in the state of our once pristine home. Takeout containers littered every surface, and the air reeked of stale alcohol. Mary emerged from the kitchen, her eyes narrowing at the sight of us. What are they doing here? She hissed at Owen. My father stepped forward, his voice firm. We're here to settle this once and for all, Mary. As the owners of this property, we're serving you with an eviction notice. Owen's jaw dropped. Owners? What are you talking about? I couldn't help but feel a twinge of satisfaction as I watched the realization dawn on their faces. That's right, I said. My parents own this entire complex, and you haven't paid rent in months. Mary's face contorted with rage. You can't do this to us. We'll fight this. With what money? My mother asked calmly. We've seen your financials, Owen. You're broke. Owen collapsed onto the couch, his head in his hands. I didn't mean for it to get this bad. I thought I could fix it. For a moment I felt a flicker of pity. But then I remembered all the lies, the manipulation, the years of belittling my achievements. My resolve hardened. You have 48 hours to vacate the premises, I said, my voice steady. After that, we'll be forced to take legal action. Mary lunged forward, her eyes wild. You ungrateful little. My father stepped between us. his presence imposing. "That's enough, Mary. It's over." As Mary retreated, muttering under her breath, Owen looked up at me, his eyes pleading. "Emily, please. I know I messed up, but I love you. We can start over, make things right." I felt a lump form in my throat, memories of our happier times flashing through my mind, but I pushed them aside, focusing on the truth I now knew. "No, Owen," I said softly. "We can't. You never loved me for who I am. You loved the idea of me, the status I brought you. It's time for both of us to face reality." I turned to leave, but Owen's desperate voice stopped me. "What am I supposed to do now? Where will we go?" I looked back at him, seeing for the first time how small and pathetic he truly was. "That's not my problem anymore, Owen. You're an adult. Figure it out." As we walked out of the condo, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The cool air hit my face, and I took a deep breath, savoring the taste of freedom. My mother squeezed my hand. "You did it, sweetheart. It's over." I nodded, tears pricking at my eyes. "I just can't believe I let it go on for so long. I feel so stupid." "Hey now," my father said, pulling me into a hug. "You're one of the smartest, strongest women I know. You recognize the truth and you fought for yourself. That's something to be proud of." As we drove away from the condo complex, I watched my old life disappear in the rearview mirror. A mix of emotions swirled within me: relief, sadness, and a growing sense of excitement for the future. "So," I said, turning to my parents, "tell me more about this property management business of yours." They exchanged a smile before my mother replied, "Well, we could always use someone with your skills if you're interested." I felt a grin spread across my face. "You know what? I think I am." As we drove towards my parents' home, my temporary home until I got back on my feet, I realized that this ending was really a new beginning. I had lost a husband, but I had gained something far more valuable: self-respect, a deeper connection with my family, and a future full of possibilities. The road ahead might be uncertain, but for the first time in years, I was excited to see where it would lead. Because this time, I was in the driver's seat of my own life, and that was worth more than any luxury condo or false promise of love ever could be.
Mom, I missed you. What's wrong? What happened? Dad said I'm stupid and he doesn't need me. He said dealing with an idiot is a waste of time and money, and to just do whatever without him. It's okay, you're a genius. No, I'm not. I can't study like my brother, nor am I the best at soccer. Like Dad said, I'm stupid and can't do anything. That's not true. You have talents that match your brother. Talents that are unique to you. Mom knows it. The real fool is Dad. One holiday, after I finished my errands and returned home, my younger son was curled up in his room. It seemed that my husband had left the house, taking only our eldest son, who is considered a prodigy. I would agree to a divorce. 15 years later, I've started a new job, and as part of that job, I was conducting a job interview. Please, come in. Why are you here? At the interview, my ex-husband was surprised to see me. But this level of surprise was nothing to me. I am Amy, a 38-year-old working at an IT company. My husband Georg is 2 years older, and we have been married for 12 years. We met at work. We both work in web marketing at the same company. It's not a dramatic love story, just an office romance. After getting married, I changed departments, but I still work at the same company as my husband. We have 2 sons, Alex, our 10-year-old eldest, and Nat, our 8-year-old youngest. From the outside, it might look like we have a perfect family, successful in both careers and parenting. However, I've been troubled by something for about 5 years. Is this recording and the next construction? Amazing, Alex. You can read such difficult words and you're still in kindergarten. While watching a quiz show as a family, our 5-year-old eldest son was able to answer the questions easily. My husband and I were more focused on our son's answers than the show itself. Of course, he can't read the most difficult words yet. But he can almost guess all the elementary level ones correctly. You're a genius. You'll grow up to be a much finer adult than us. My husband ruffled our eldest son's hair vigorously, praising him. Our son looked annoyed, but also seemed pleased. Some might think we're just doting parents for making a big deal out of him being able to read a few words. But his genius isn't limited to just reading words. Hey, listen. Today at kindergarten, a friend caught a praying mantis. But the teacher said it was sad and to let it go outside. I know the teacher is scared of bugs, though. She looked fine. But I think she was actually scared. Maybe she thought we'd prank her with the mantis if we knew she was scared of bugs. It was so funny seeing her try to act brave. During dinner, our eldest son excitedly shared his experiences from kindergarten. He was so engrossed in his story that his eating paused. As a 5-year-old, it's normal for children to talk about their day nonstop. However, the way he narrates his day, using conjunctions and constructing well-thought-out sentences, makes it easy to understand him. It feels like talking to an upper elementary school student. In addition to literacy and conversation, he can also handle simple math and science. What's remarkable about our eldest son is that he has been learning on his own, without us teaching him or sending him to cram schools. I believe a significant reason my eldest son was able to learn on his own was the children's tablet I bought him when he was 3 years old. The tablets and learning apps these days are incredible. That's part of it, but it's really Alex's own abilities that are amazing. He's a genius. Watching our eldest son practice writing words on a tablet in the living room, my husband looked proud. I also think our son is a genius. But I don't want to be seen as just a doting parent. So I force myself to believe that it's not just him, it's the technology that's impressive. However, I can't deny he's a genius when something undeniable happens. The cram school teacher was surprised, wasn't he? Yes, Alex scored perfect marks on the entrance test, which included problems up to a 3rd grade level. He answered them all easily. That's why the teacher was so surprised and said, "This child is a prodigy." The teacher's endorsement settles it. We're not just doting parents. As we spread out the perfect score test papers on the table, our expressions couldn't help but soften. When our eldest son started elementary school, we decided to enroll him in a cram school. We planned to do it eventually, but we thought it was time since there are limits to learning with a tablet alone. I'll stop by the cram school on my way home from school today. Got a question for the teacher? Yes. I'll also study in an empty classroom. Okay, I'll pick you up from the cram school after work. Our eldest son put on his shoes and cheerfully went to school. To anyone else, he might look like any other elementary school student. I waved goodbye to him without turning back. He seems to enjoy studying more at the cram school than on his own. He feels it's more efficient than studying alone, and he seems to have fun. Studying is a struggle for an ordinary person like me, but to him, it's more interesting than games. Perhaps that's the difference between an ordinary person and a genius. While this has turned into a brag about our eldest son, the reason I've been troubled for the past 5 years is precisely because of his genius. With our prodigy eldest son getting all the attention, people always talk about him. But we also have our youngest son, Matt. Unlike his older brother, Matt isn't a prodigy, he's just a normal child. He couldn't read words or do math and science from kindergarten like his brother. But what does that matter? People focusing solely on our eldest son is unavoidable. However, as their mother, I love them both equally. I don't treat our eldest son specially because he's a prodigy. And I show the same affection to Matt as I do to his older brother. Enrolling our eldest son in cram school wasn't special treatment. It was just what was best for him. When Matt started elementary school, he became interested in soccer. So we enrolled him in a local soccer club. I pick him up when practice ends late. And I've bought him balls and gear. Matt seems to have a more active personality than his older brother. Hey, brother. Can you help me with my homework? Again? What don't you understand? With a look of discontent for having to stop his own studies, the elder son, Alex, teaches his younger brother, Matt, how to solve a problem. Alex seems reluctant but has never refused Matt's requests. Alex and Matt have different interests, studies for Alex, and sports for Matt, and their personalities are quite different. But they get along well. In our family, nobody treats Alex and Matt differently. Except for one person. Alex. I heard from the cram school teacher that you topped the test again. They said your abilities could easily rank at the top nationwide. It doesn't really matter to me. No, it does matter. You deserve a reward for your results. Is there anything you want or something you'd like to do? It's okay. You just took me to the botanical garden. Don't hold back. It's my job as a father to make your studying easier. Then, I could use some new highlighters. Mine are almost out. All right, leave it to me. I'll get you a pack of 10 colors. Keep up the good work. As my husband pats Alex on the back while he studies in the living room. He praises him and offers rewards for his good test scores. Alex looks a bit annoyed by this. Now that Alex is 10 and Matt is 8. There's a significant difference in their academic abilities. Neither I nor Alex and Matt care about this. But my husband seems to only clearly favor Alex. My husband buys various things only for Alex. He took Alex alone to the botanical garden. Because Alex wanted to observe the plants there. Deciding that there was no need for Matt and me to go. Matt, don't just play soccer, take a page out of your brother's book and study more. You can't make a living off soccer, you know. Watching Matt, who was previously enjoying TV next to his studying brother. My husband's smile suddenly disappeared. Matt had finished his homework before watching TV. And Alex never minds the noise while he studies. This is self-study. Therefore, it's not like Matt is slacking off. However, since he hasn't produced results in either studies or soccer, my husband equates it to slacking off. Indeed, competition is important in society. But this is too early for an 8-year-old Matt, and I can't accept my husband's words. Hey. Matt is trying his best in his own way, that's enough. Why do you make such comparisons with Alex? If effort is enough, what if no results come from it? It means nothing. Why is there such a difference between our children? What do you mean by difference? Matt is fine as he is. I couldn't hold back and yelled at my husband, but he, believing he was correct, just smirked and walked out of the living room. My husband's favoritism towards Alex started about 5 years ago. And his treatment of Matt has gradually worsened. I've tried to call him out on it. But his attitude hasn't changed, leaving me frustrated. Seeing Matt looking down as if he did something wrong made me sad. He turned off the TV he was watching and went to his room. At 8 years old, he understands adult conversations. Surely, my husband's words hurt him. I followed my husband to the bedroom and yelled at him again. What are you thinking? Matt looked so sad. His mental weakness is also a problem. You need a strong mentality to achieve results in studies or sports, right? Maybe I should train Matt's mentality. My husband seemed to have come up with another bad idea, grinning again. His expression looked devilish to me, and while I was initially angry, I soon felt frightened. Don't say things that make Matt sad anymore. I suppressed my fear and warned my husband loudly. The true nature of this fear would soon become apparent. The next evening, as usual, Matt watched TV in the living room. After finishing his homework, and Alex studied without caring about the TV noise. My husband abruptly walked over to Matt, grabbed the remote from the table, and turned off the TV. Don't slack off. Why do you have such a habit? Look at your brother, he's studying, isn't he? Shouldn't you be studying too? All you do is play soccer until late evening. What will that get you? Can you be the best at soccer? If not, you can't make a living with it. You'd better study a bit for your future. If you don't study, I'll kick you out of the house. Matt, not understanding why he was being suddenly yelled at, began to cry silently. Alex stopped studying as well. The fear towards my husband paralyzed me, Alex, and Matt for a few seconds of silence. Unable to bear the silence any longer, Matt abruptly stood up from the sofa and ran to his room crying. Suddenly saying such things, what are you thinking? Not wanting to argue in front of Alex, I grabbed my husband's arm and dragged him to the bedroom. Ouch, let go. What are you thinking? Suddenly berating Matt like that. I thought maybe Matt's lack of thoroughness in studies and sports is because of a weak mentality. So, I thought I'd yell at him when he slacks off or fails to produce results. Maybe that'll instill some stoicism in him? My husband's expression was serious. I felt fear again at his belief in such an unbelievable method of education. It was natural for me to decide not to let my husband and Matt interact any further. Stop it. Don't involve yourself with Matt anymore. Is that so? You take care of Matt. I'll take care of Alex then. I appealed to my husband in a voice that seemed to seek help. But he seemed to have come up with another bad idea. A month later, as I instructed, my husband stopped interfering with Matt's education and mostly avoided talking to him. His words about me taking care of Matt and him taking care of Alex probably meant that we should each handle the education of one child. Personally, I don't think it's a good method of education. But it's better than my husband continuing to yell at Matt. Besides, Alex can learn on his own and already makes decisions like an adult. So there shouldn't be any problems even if I can't intervene in his education. Though reluctantly, I decided this arrangement was acceptable for now to protect Matt. However, my husband's thoughts were far beyond what I had imagined. One holiday, I was out from morning till evening for an errand. When I returned home and entered the house, I was struck by a strange feeling of unease. Not sure if it was necessary, I cautiously moved along the hallway and first headed towards the living room. As I opened the door to the living room and slowly peered inside, the room's scenery had changed. The shelves were empty of small items, and the walls were bare where things had once hung. I panicked for a moment, thinking a burglar had entered, but the choice of stolen items and the undisturbed state of the room were odd. It seemed as if only the necessary items had been taken. With no one in the living room, I worriedly headed to the children's rooms. As I touched the doorknob of Matt's room, I sensed someone inside. Gathering my courage, I quietly opened the door. Mom. I missed you. Despite it being evening and getting dark, Matt was sitting in his room in the dark, curled up in a ball. I didn't turn on the light, but instead rushed over to my son, who looked troubled. What's wrong? What happened? Dad said I'm stupid and unnecessary. Dealing with an idiot is just a waste of time and money. So you guys can just do whatever without me. As my younger son spoke, I could feel my anger rising, almost to the point of exploding. However, seeing his sad expression made my anger decrease slightly, and sadness began to take over. It's okay, you're a genius. That's a lie. I can't study like my brother, nor am I the best at soccer. Just like Dad said, I'm stupid and can't do anything. That's not true. Matt, you have talents that match your brother. Talents that are unique to you. Mom knows this well. The real fool is Dad. Are you hungry? Shall we have dinner? I tried to distract my younger son from his sadness by changing the subject to dinner, though it might have also been to mask my own sadness and anger. It seems that instead of sharing the responsibility of our children's education, my husband is thinking of divorce, where each of us would take one child and raise them separately. He probably thinks that having the prodigious elder son with a younger son who can't meet his standards will negatively influence him. I agree with the idea of divorce. I don't want the younger son to be with my husband, and our arguments must have been audible to the children even from another room. For the children's sake, it would be better if we divorced. However, I would like to prevent my husband from taking the elder son. Thus, during the divorce discussions, there was a dispute about the elder son. We decided to ask for the elder son's opinion, expecting him to choose to live with me. But he said, I want to live with Dad. He wants to live with me too, right? His words shocked me, and I was left speechless. Seeing me like this, my husband sneered audibly. Since the elder son wants this, there was nothing I could do. The divorce ended up just as my husband had hoped, with him taking the elder son and me taking the younger son. For my husband, who values results above all, this must have been a satisfying outcome. However, the results that followed did not go as he had hoped. 15 years later, not wanting to work at the same company as my husband, I used the divorce as an opportunity to work at a different company, doing a different job. Although we moved, I didn't want to transfer my younger son to another school, so we moved nearby. My ex-husband seemed to have the same idea and moved not far from our previous home. The child support for my younger son stopped around the time the elder son entered university. Although I had complaints, I was doing well in my new job and my income had increased. Thinking that dealing with my ex-husband now would only bring stress, I decided not to say anything. Today, as part of my new job, I am conducting a job interview. Please, come in. The person who came in for the interview, hoping to change jobs, entered the conference room where the interview was held and, instead of greeting, expressed surprise first. Wait, why are you here? My ex-husband stepped back in surprise, bumping into the still open door. It's no wonder he was shocked since only my younger son and I were sitting there as interviewers. Please, have a seat. With a look of disbelief, as if questioning whether this was a dream, he slowly sat down without saying anything, since he had not maintained any business etiquette from the moment he entered. If this were a real interview, he would already have failed. Of course, I had no intention of passing him. I have that authority. Why are you here? And Matt too. Are you guys part of the HR here? No, I saw someone from HR during the first interview. What are you doing in this company? You didn't research this company properly before coming to the interview. Did you? Then, I can't hire you. I did research for the company. Isn't this a web consulting firm? That was established 15 years ago with an annual revenue of $8 million? I applied thinking I could utilize my web marketing knowledge. Did you look at the company's homepage? The part with the president's name? The president's name? You really didn't research properly. You can use your phone right now to check it. My ex-husband, looking puzzled, took out his smartphone from his bag, turned it on, and started looking up the company's homepage. My younger son and I, anticipating his reaction, grinned at each other while waiting. The president's name is under corporate information, right? The name is A? What? Pfft. I burst out laughing at my ex-husband's reaction when he saw my name under the president's section. Why is your name listed under the president's section? That's because I'm the president of this company. What? 15 years ago, after the divorce, I quit my job and used my experience to start a web consulting firm. My new job was being the president of a web consulting company. While it was challenging at first, as my husband said, the company grew to a scale of $8 million in annual revenue over 15 years. Unaware that I was the president, my ex-husband, like me, had moved not far from our previous home. Therefore, our living and commuting areas were quite similar. It was not strange for him to find and apply to my fast-growing company. If he was looking for a company where he could use his web marketing experience within that range. What was strange was that he missed the name of the company president during his job application. I was looking through the application documents of the candidates who passed the first interview, saw your resume, and thought it would be interesting to have you come today. Oh, of course, not checking the president's name already disqualifies you. Not focusing on results and just doing well is enough. And you, who indulged Matt with such an education, are the president. My ex-husband, realizing that someone with a different philosophy like me had succeeded in business, desperately tried to deny it, thinking that his own beliefs were not wrong. Sweat began to form on his forehead, and his eyes darted around. As his gaze fell on Matt, he spoke. Being the president must mean your abilities were high, right? I'll admit you're competent. But you becoming president must mean Matt got into the company just because of your authority, right? He's just hanging on to your results, and ultimately, it means Matt can't do anything on his own, right? That's just you indulging your kids, isn't it? How can Matt survive on his own if that's the case? I didn't get Matt into the company using my presidential powers. He went through interviews and exams just like any other job seeker, without any special treatment. That's just your word, anyone could say that. Even if he was treated specially to get in. Matt has already become a top-notch salesman, bringing in lots of business within his first year. Isn't that the result you value? He's in sales at a web consulting firm, right? That means he can't be stupid if he's doing web consulting work, right? That's not true. Being in sales means he has to be able to explain web consulting well enough to convince clients. So, he needs to always keep up with the latest knowledge and skills. in addition to sales skills. I think it's a role that's even tougher than being on site. I plan to have him become a sales engineer who will accompany the sales team in the future. Matt, who used to only play soccer, is becoming an engineer. And he's producing results within his first year? You only look at results, so you didn't notice that Matt is a genius at effort. During his elementary school years, Matt would stay and practice soccer later, and more earnestly than anyone else. He may not have become the best in soccer, but he could persist and continue to try hard in any situation, which is an important skill in society. Before the divorce, I couldn't forgive how my ex-husband tried to force Matt to give up his effortful talent through meaningless shouting. That's why I yelled at my ex-husband. After the divorce, Matt wanted to help with my company. So he went to a university specializing in information systems. Although studying was a challenge for him, he leveraged his talent for effort, spending more than twice as long as others to achieve top grades in university. Matt's existence proved that my approach to education was not mistaken. It seemed that my ex-husband, focusing solely on results, finally grasped the importance of the process, the effort, which left him speechless. Seeing my ex-husband unable to respond, I felt satisfied. But it appeared Matt wanted to press him further. Dad, the reason for applying on your resume says you want to explore a new field. But that's not true, is it? What? No, that's not a lie. I want to leverage my web marketing knowledge to learn and acquire skills in web consulting next. Isn't it true that you relied on your elder son's income and, instead of joining a major company, you ended up in some mediocre company with an okay salary, and now you're job hunting? Did you hear that from Alex? You asked knowing that. What a cunning person you've become. Well, you're half right. Should we invite him in now? Matt called out loudly toward the entrance, summoning someone from beyond the door. At the sound of the door opening, my ex-husband, still seated, turned towards the door. Alex, are you working here too? Yeah, I am. I'm learning the ropes of web consulting here now. Remember how you yelled at me to get a better job when I graduated from university? The company you were referring to was this one. I've been in touch with Mom and learned about the company. I was surprised when I saw Alex's resume right before his final interview. He applied without telling me. At that time, you must have known about this company's name from your brother. But you seem to have completely forgotten it over these 3 years. Well, it's no wonder since you, Dad, who wanted to be supported by a son working in a good position, probably weren't interested in the company details and forgot. I never thought about it like that. Why would you say such a thing? Right after you and Mom divorced, you kept treating me like I was still a little boy, insisting I should get a job at a big company in the future or that I should take care of you since you raised me. Even a grade schooler could see through such dark intentions. I've disliked you since I was a kid. Then why did you choose to come with me during the divorce? When I said I wanted to go with Mom, you thought it would make me a worse person. So, I decided to live with you, hoping maybe you would change to be more like Mom. But that was impossible. You quit your job when Alex was in university, right? You did it because you thought soon Alex would support you. And you wouldn't need to work at such a hard job in IT anymore. That's why you became a part-timer relying on Alex's future earnings, isn't it? While working part-time, living off savings and severance pay. You planned to be supported by your son once he got a job. That plan failed when he got a job at some unknown company. And that's why you confronted him about his job choice. When you became a part-timer, I gave up hoping you'd change your mindset. That's why I left home as soon as I got a job. If I had the same perseverance as Matt, maybe I could have continued trying to change your mind. No way, even I would give up if someone relied on me to become a part-timer, Dad. Being called a prodigy, the elder son, and Matt, a genius of effort. In a world where many companies struggle with succession, I am fortunate. Watching my two sons talking and laughing, I imagine a not-so-distant future. While I envision a bright future, my ex-husband imagines a bleak one. His expression somber. He abandoned me and Matt to be supported by the prodigious elder son, but now finds himself being abandoned by all of us. Please hire me at this company. I've been working part-time for the past 7 years, and I'm out of money. No one else will hire me. Well, that's to be expected. In this industry, new technologies and information emerge all the time. With a 7-year gap, it's hard to find work. That's why I tried to get re-employed during the 4-year gap when Alex graduated. But that didn't work out either. I've just been dragging my feet since then. I'm not interested in what you've done up to now. Results are what matter, right? Right now, you're not in demand in the IT industry. That's the result. Such. Hey, Alex. You owe me for raising you. Convince her. It seems my ex-husband has learned nothing from this ordeal. After 15 years, I finally snapped at his words. Enough. You don't raise children to have them take care of you or to boast about them to others. What debt of upbringing? Rather, we should feel grateful that our children came into our lives. My loud voice brought other employees into the conference room. Escort this man out, please. My ex-husband was led out by the arriving employees, his eyes filled with regret. However, with the results of raising Matt, who never gives up, and growing the company significantly, my ex-husband has no ground to stand on against me. I worried that my yelling might have scared the children, so I cautiously looked at their faces. Their expressions seemed to commend me, saying well done. Abandoned by me, Alex, and Matt, my ex-husband began searching for jobs outside the IT industry. Despite his long career, abandoning over 20 years of experience takes courage, which he lacked, clinging to the IT sector. This resulted in him nearly penniless. At 55, penniless, my ex-husband took a job at a supermarket, inexperienced. He is willing to work hard, but learning new things is difficult at his age. And he lacks the physical stamina. Thus, he is reprimanded by younger supervisors and even university student part-timers at his workplace. Mentally and physically challenging. Changing jobs wouldn't improve his situation much. I believe he should keep the job he has, no matter how tough it is. Our company continues to do well without change. However, reaching a revenue of $10 million is considered a barrier. Currently, we are at $8 million. Our next goal is to break through that barrier. While it's challenging, with 2 talented children, I believe we can achieve it.
The phone rang, shattering the silence of our kitchen. I reached for it, but Bradley snatched it away, his eyes darting nervously. "I'll get it," he mumbled, disappearing into his study. I stood there, wooden spoon in hand, sauce forgotten on the stove. That wasn't like Bradley at all. In 12 years of marriage, we'd never hidden calls from each other. Something was off, and I could feel it in my bones. "Mom, is dinner ready?" Emily's voice startled me out of my thoughts. Our 12-year-old daughter stood in the doorway, nose buried in her phone. Almost, sweetie. Why don't you set the table? As Emily begrudgingly put down her phone, I stirred the sauce, my mind racing. When had things changed? Bradley and I used to be the perfect couple, college sweethearts who'd built a life together. Now it felt like we were drifting apart, and I couldn't pinpoint why. The study door opened, and Bradley emerged, his face a mask of forced cheerfulness. Sorry about that, honey. Work call. On a Sunday evening? I raised an eyebrow. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. You know how it is. The Johnson account is giving us trouble. I nodded, unconvinced. The Bradley I married would have shared the details asked for my input. This Bradley was a stranger. Dinner was a quiet affair, punctuated only by Emily's chatter about school and her friends. I watched Bradley push his food around his plate, his mind clearly elsewhere. How about we all go for ice cream after dinner? I suggested, desperate to recapture some of our old family magic. Emily's face lit up, but Bradley shook his head. Sorry, I've got some work to finish up. You two go ahead. As I cleared the dishes, I caught a glimpse of our reflection in the window. When had we become these people? This isn't what I'd imagined when I said I do all those years ago. Mom? Emily's voice pulled me back to reality. Can we still go for ice cream? I forced a smile. Of course, sweetie. Let me grab my purse. As we walked to the ice cream parlor, the warm evening air did little to dispel the chill in my heart. Emily chattered away, oblivious to my inner turmoil. Mom, why is Dad always working now? She asked suddenly, her voice small. I stumbled, caught off guard by her perceptiveness. Well, honey, sometimes adults have to work hard to provide for their families. She frowned, unconvinced. But he never wants to do anything with us anymore. My heart ached at the truth in her words. I'm sure it's just temporary, sweetie. Things will get better. But even as I said it, I wasn't sure I believed it myself. Back home, I found Bradley in his study, door firmly closed. I knocked gently. Brad, can we talk? He opened the door, looking haggard. What is it, Laura? I'm swamped here. I miss you. We miss you. Emily was asking about you earlier. His expression softened for a moment, then hardened again. I'm doing this for us, Laura, for our future. But what about our present? I pleaded. We need you here now. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. I can't do this right now. We'll talk later, okay? As the door closed in my face, I felt a surge of anger and hurt. This wasn't the man I married. This wasn't the life I'd signed up for. My phone buzzed with a text. It was from an unknown number. Your husband is lying to you. Meet me tomorrow at noon, Central Park bench near the duck pond. Come alone. I stared at the screen, my heart pounding. Who was this? What did they know? As I deleted the message, one thing became clear. Our perfect life was about to shatter, and I had no idea how to stop it. I stared at the moving boxes piled high in our living room, a lump forming in my throat. This wasn't how I'd imagined spending my 40th birthday. Mom, where should I put these? Emily asked, struggling with a box labeled kitchen. Just leave it there, sweetie. We'll sort it out later. I forced a smile, trying to hide my unease. Bradley burst through the front door, grinning from ear to ear. Isn't this great? Back in my old hometown, new job, fresh start for all of us. I nodded weakly, remembering the career I'd left behind in the city. Yeah, great. Oh, come on, Laura. This is a fantastic opportunity for us, Bradley said, his enthusiasm grating on my nerves. For you, you mean? I muttered under my breath. What was that? Nothing, I said, plastering on a fake smile. Just thinking about all the unpacking we need to do. The doorbell rang, saving me from further conversation. I opened it to find Cynthia, Bradley's mother, standing there with a casserole dish. Welcome to the neighborhood, she trilled, pushing past me into the house. Oh, Bradley, darling, how wonderful to have you back home. I watched as she enveloped Bradley in a hug, completely ignoring Emily and me. Some things never change. Laura, Cynthia said, finally acknowledging my presence. I hope you'll be able to adjust to small-town life. It's quite different from your big city ways. I'm sure I'll manage, I replied, gritting my teeth. Cynthia bustled into the kitchen, making herself at home. Now, let me show you how to properly organize this space. I'm sure you'll need the help. I bit my tongue, reminding myself that this was Bradley's mother. But as she rearranged my carefully packed kitchen items, criticizing everything from my choice of cutlery to my cooking utensils, I felt my patience wearing thin. Mom, Bradley called from the living room, I forgot to mention I invited some old friends over for dinner tonight to celebrate our move. I froze, my hands full of mismatched Tupperware. Tonight? Bradley, we just got here. The house is a mess, and I haven't even unpacked the groceries yet. He waved off my concerns. It's just a casual get-together. They won't mind. Cynthia piped up, "Oh, don't worry, dear. I'll take care of everything. You clearly need the help." I closed my eyes, counting to 10. When I opened them, I saw Emily watching me with concern. "Mom, are you okay?" she whispered. I nodded, pulling her into a hug. "I'm fine, sweetie, just a little overwhelmed." As the evening wore on, our house filled with Bradley's old friends. I plastered on a smile, playing the role of the happy wife while Cynthia held court in the kitchen, regaling everyone with stories of Bradley's childhood. "Remember when you won the state spelling bee?" she gushed. "Always knew you'd do great things, unlike some people who give up their careers at the drop of a hat." The room fell silent, all eyes turning to me. I felt my cheeks burn with humiliation. "Mom," Bradley warned, but the damage was done. I excused myself, fleeing to the back porch. The cool night air did little to calm my racing heart. What had I done? I'd given up everything. My job, my friends, my independence, for this. The porch door creaked open behind me. I turned, expecting Bradley, but instead found Emily. "Mom," she said softly, "I heard Grandma talking to Dad. She said you're not good enough for him, that he could do better." My heart shattered. I pulled Emily close, stroking her hair. "Oh, sweetie, that's not true. Your grandma she just wants what's best for your dad. But what about what's best for you?" Emily asked, her voice muffled against my shirt. I had no answer. As we stood there, the sounds of laughter drifting from inside, I realized I'd never felt more alone. Something had to change, and soon. But what could I do, trapped in this new life I never wanted? The porch door opened again. This time it was Bradley. "Laura? Mom's looking for you. She needs help serving dessert." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "Coming," I said, my voice hollow. As I walked back into the house, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was walking into a trap of my own making. The library's quiet hum was a welcome respite from the chaos at home. I shelved books methodically, losing myself in the familiar routine. It wasn't the high-powered career I'd left behind, but it was something that was mine. "Laura, dear?" Mrs. Henderson, the head librarian, approached. "There's a call for you at the front desk. It's your mother-in-law." My stomach clenched. What could Cynthia want now? I picked up the phone, bracing myself. "Hello, Cynthia." "Laura, I've had the most wonderful idea," she gushed. "We should all go to the lake house this weekend. It'll be perfect for family bonding." I bit back a groan. "This weekend? I'm not sure if—" "Nonsense. I've already spoken to Bradley, and he thinks it's marvelous. Emily will love it too, I'm sure." Of course, she'd gone behind my back. "Cynthia, I really don't think—" "It's settled then. We'll leave Friday afternoon. Do try to be punctual, dear." The line went dead before I could protest further. I slumped against the desk, defeat washing over me. That evening, I broached the subject with Bradley. "Your mother called about a lake house trip?" He barely looked up from his phone. "Oh yeah, sounds great, doesn't it?" "Bradley, we can't just drop everything and go. I have work, and Emily has her dance recital practice." He finally met my gaze, irritation flashing in his eyes. "Come on, Laura. It's just a weekend. Mom's trying to make an effort here. Can't you do the same?" I bit my tongue, choking back the words I really wanted to say. "Fine, for Emily's sake." Friday arrived too soon. As we packed the car, Cynthia bustled around, criticizing everything from my choice of snacks to the way I folded Emily's clothes. "Really, Laura?" she tutted. "Don't you know how to pack properly? Here, let me show you." I clenched my fists, forcing a smile. "Thanks, Cynthia, but I've got it under control." The drive to the lake house was tense. Emily sat silently in the back, headphones firmly in place. Bradley chatted with his mother, both of them ignoring me completely. As we pulled up to the lake house, I had to admit it was beautiful. The sun glinted off the water, and the air smelled of pine and possibility. "Isn't it wonderful?" Cynthia crowed. "Bradley, remember when we used to come here every summer?" "How could I forget, Mom? Best times of my life." I lugged our bags inside, feeling like an outsider in my own family. The weekend crawled by in a haze of forced smiles and thinly veiled insults. Cynthia dominated every conversation, regaling us with tales of Bradley's childhood and not-so-subtle digs at my parenting. "Emily, darling," she said over dinner. Has your mother taught you how to make my famous pot roast yet? Oh, that's right, Laura isn't much of a cook, is she? I gripped my fork tighter, willing myself not to react. On Sunday morning, I escaped to the dock, desperate for a moment of peace. The lake stretched out before me, calm and indifferent to my turmoil. Mom? Emily's voice startled me. Are you okay? I turned to find my daughter watching me with worried eyes. I'm fine, sweetie. Just enjoying the view. She sat beside me, her legs dangling over the water. I don't like it here, she confessed. Grandma's always so mean to you. My heart ached. Oh, honey, it's not. It's complicated. Adult relationships can be tricky sometimes. But Dad never stands up for you? Doesn't he love you anymore? The question hit me like a punch to the gut. Before I could answer, Bradley's voice rang out from the house. Laura, Mom needs help in the kitchen, I sighed, squeezing Emily's hand. We should go back. As we walked towards the house, I caught sight of Bradley through the window. He was hunched over his phone, a secretive smile on his face. My stomach churned with a familiar dread. Just then his phone pinged loudly. Cynthia, passing by, glanced at the screen. Her eyes widened, then narrowed as she looked at me. Laura, dear, she called, her voice sickly sweet. Could you come here for a moment? There's something we need to discuss. I froze, my heart pounding. Whatever was coming, I knew it wouldn't be good. With a deep breath, I stepped into the house, bracing myself for the storm that was about to break. I stepped into the lake house, my heart pounding. Cynthia's saccharine smile sent chills down my spine. Laura, dear, she cooed. I couldn't help but notice something on Bradley's phone. I think you should see it. Bradley's head snapped up, his face paling. Mom, that's private. But Cynthia had already thrust the phone into my hands. On the screen was a text message from someone named Amber. The words blurred before my eyes, but one phrase stood out. Can't wait to see you again, baby. The room spun. I looked at Bradley, searching for denial, explanation, anything. But his guilty expression said it all. How long? I whispered. Laura, it's not what you think. How long? I repeated, my voice stronger now. Cynthia interjected, her voice dripping with false concern. Now, Laura, let's not jump to conclusions. I'm sure there's a perfectly reasonable explanation. I whirled on her. Stay out of this, Cynthia. This is between me and your son. Bradley stood, reaching for me. Laura, please. It's just a work thing. Amber's a colleague. A colleague you call baby? I spat. Do you think I'm stupid? Emily appeared in the doorway, her eyes wide with fear. Mom? Dad? What's going on? The sight of our daughter snapped me back to reality. I couldn't do this here, not in front of her. I took a deep breath, forcing calm into my voice. Nothing, sweetie, just a misunderstanding. Why don't you go pack your things? We're leaving. But we're supposed to stay until tomorrow, Emily protested. Plans change, I said firmly. Please, Emily, just do as I ask. As Emily reluctantly trudged upstairs, I turned back to Bradley. We'll discuss this at home, privately. The drive back was excruciating. Emily sat in the back seat, headphones on, oblivious to the tension crackling between Bradley and me. Cynthia had tried to intervene, but I'd shut her down with a glare that could have melted steel. At home, I sent Emily to her room, promising we'd talk later. Then I rounded on Bradley. Explain, I demanded. He sighed, running a hand through his hair. It's not what you think, Laura. Amber's just a friend. Don't lie to me, I exploded. Friends don't text like that. How long has this been going on? Is this why you wanted to move back here? Bradley's face hardened. You know what? Maybe if you hadn't been so caught up in your own career, I wouldn't have had to look elsewhere for support. His words hit me like a slap. My career? The one I gave up for you? Oh, please, he scoffed. You've been resentful ever since we moved. You never gave this place a chance. You never gave my family a chance. Your family? I laughed bitterly. You mean your mother, who's been undermining me at every turn? Who treats me like I'm not good enough for her precious son? See? This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're always playing the victim. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. Do you even love me anymore? The silence that followed was deafening. Finally, Bradley spoke, his voice low. I don't know, Laura. I don't know if I have for a long time. Something inside me shattered. I stumbled back, gripping the kitchen counter for support. I think, I said, my voice shaking, that you should leave. Tonight. I can't look at you right now. Bradley nodded, defeat etched in every line of his face. As he trudged upstairs to pack a bag, I sank to the floor, sobs racking my body. A small hand touched my shoulder. I looked up to see Emily, tears streaming down her face. "Mom," she whispered, "are you and Dad getting a divorce?" I pulled her close, stroking her hair. "I don't know, sweetie. I really don't know." As we clung to each other on the kitchen floor, I realized I had a decision to make. Fight for a marriage that might already be beyond saving, or find the strength to start over. Either way, nothing would ever be the same again. The days after Bradley left were a blur of tears and sleepless nights. I moved through the house like a ghost, barely eating, barely sleeping. Emily watched me with worried eyes, but I couldn't find the words to comfort her when I could barely hold myself together. It was on a Tuesday afternoon when everything changed. I was folding laundry, mindlessly matching socks, when Emily burst into the room, her face flushed with excitement. "Mom, I got the lead in the school play," she exclaimed, waving a script in her hand. I forced a smile, trying to muster enthusiasm. "That's wonderful, sweetie. What's the play?" "Romeo and Juliet," she said, her eyes shining. Then her face fell. "But I need to stay after school for rehearsals. Dad usually picks me up, but—" The unfinished sentence hung in the air, heavy with implications. I swallowed hard, pushing down the lump in my throat. "Don't worry, I'll figure something out." Emily hesitated, then blurted out, "Mom, is Dad living with Amber now?" The sock I was holding slipped from my fingers. "What? Emily, how do you know about Amber?" She looked down, scuffing her toe against the carpet. I overheard Dad talking to her on the phone, before the lake house trip. He said he loved her." The world tilted on its axis. I gripped the edge of the laundry basket, trying to steady myself. "Emily, why didn't you tell me?" Tears welled up in her eyes. "I didn't want to hurt you, and I thought maybe if I pretended everything was okay, it would be." I pulled her into a fierce hug, my own tears falling into her hair. "Oh, sweetie, this isn't your burden to bear. I'm so sorry you've been carrying this secret." As Emily sobbed in my arms, a cold fury settled in my chest. Bradley hadn't just betrayed me, he'd put our daughter in an impossible position. After Emily had cried herself out and gone to her room, I reached for my phone with shaking hands. I dialed a number I knew by heart. "Lily, it's Laura. I need your help." My best friend's voice was warm and concerned. "Laura, what's wrong?" "It's Bradley," I said, my voice breaking. "He's been having an affair. I think I need a divorce lawyer." Lily's sharp intake of breath crackled over the line. "Oh, honey, I'm so sorry. Listen, I know a great family law attorney. I'll send you her details. But Laura, are you sure about this?" I closed my eyes, seeing Emily's tear-stained face in my mind. I have to be. For Emily's sake, if nothing else. After hanging up, I sat on the bed, my mind racing. The thought of divorce terrified me. How would we manage financially? What would happen to Emily? But the alternative, staying in a loveless marriage, watching my daughter suffer in silence, was unthinkable. A soft knock at the door pulled me from my thoughts. Emily peeked in, her face pale and drawn. "Mom, can I sleep in here tonight?" I patted the bed beside me, and she crawled in, curling up against me like she used to when she was little. As I stroked her hair, a fierce determination welled up inside me. "Emily," I said softly, "I want you to know that whatever happens between your dad and me, it's not your fault, and I will always, always be here for you." She nodded against my shoulder, her voice muffled. "Are you going to divorce Dad?" The question hung in the air, heavy with implications. I took a deep breath, knowing my answer would change everything. "I think I have to, sweetie, for both of us." As Emily's breathing evened out in sleep, I stared at the ceiling, my mind made up. Tomorrow, I would call the lawyer Lily recommended. Tomorrow, I would take the first step towards reclaiming my life and protecting my daughter. It wouldn't be easy. Bradley and Cynthia would fight me every step of the way. But as I held Emily close, I knew one thing for certain. I was done being a victim. It was time to fight back. The manila envelope felt heavy in my hands, like it contained more than just paper. It held the weight of my shattered world. I'd hired a private investigator last week, using the money I'd been saving for Emily's college fund. It felt wrong, but I needed to know the truth. With trembling fingers, I opened the envelope. Photos spilled out onto the kitchen table. Bradley and a young blonde woman, laughing over coffee, holding hands in the park, kissing outside an unfamiliar apartment building. My stomach churned as I flipped through them, each image a knife to my heart. The investigator's report was clinical, detailing times, dates, and locations. Bradley had been seeing this woman, Amber, for over a year. Since before we moved. Since before I gave up my career. A sob escaped my throat, quickly followed by another. I crumpled to the floor, the photos scattered around me like the pieces of my broken life. "Mom?" Emily's voice cut through my grief. I looked up to see her standing in the doorway, eyes wide with concern. I hastily wiped my tears, trying to gather the photos. "It's nothing, sweetie, just some work stuff." But Emily was too quick. She snatched one of the photos, her face paling as she recognized her father with another woman. Is this why Dad left?" she whispered. I nodded, unable to lie. "I'm so sorry, Emily. You shouldn't have to deal with this." She dropped the photo, her face hardening. "We need to confront him. And Grandma Cynthia, too. She knows, doesn't she?" Her maturity stunned me. I pulled her into a hug, marveling at her strength. "You're right. It's time we face this head on." I called Bradley, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "We need to talk, all of us, including your mother. Come to the house tonight." Hours later, we sat in the living room, Emily and I on one couch, Bradley and Cynthia on the other. The photos lay on the coffee table between us, an undeniable testament to Bradley's betrayal. "How could you?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Bradley's face was ashen. "Laura, I can explain." "Explain what?" Emily interrupted, her voice sharp. "How you lied to us, how you made Mom give up everything for you," Cynthia bristled. "Now, Emily, that's no way to speak to your father." "And you," Emily rounded on her grandmother. "You knew, didn't you? You helped him hide it." Cynthia's silence was all the confirmation we needed. I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I want a divorce, Bradley. I can't do this anymore." The room exploded into chaos. Bradley pleaded, Cynthia shouted, Emily cried, but I stood firm, a strange calm settling over me. "Enough," I shouted, silencing them all. "This isn't up for debate. You've made your choices, Bradley. Now I'm making mine." I turned to Cynthia, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "And you never thought I was good enough for your precious son. Well, guess what? He wasn't good enough for me, for us." Cynthia's face turned an alarming shade of red. "How dare you, after everything we've done for you, what you've done?" I laughed bitterly. "You've done nothing but undermine and belittle me from day one. Well, I'm done. I'm taking Emily, and we're leaving. Tonight." Bradley stood, reaching for me. "Laura, please. We can work this out." I stepped back, shaking my head. "No, Bradley. We can't. It's over." As I turned to leave, Cynthia's voice, cold and threatening, stopped me in my tracks. "If you leave now, you'll get nothing. We'll make sure of it. You'll be penniless, homeless. Is that what you want for Emily?" I froze, the weight of her threat crushing me. Everything I'd worked for, everything I'd sacrificed, could I really walk away from it all? Could I subject Emily to a life of struggle just to escape this toxic marriage? As I stood there, torn between my desire for freedom and my fear of the unknown, I realized I was facing the biggest decision of my life. Whatever I chose next would shape not just my future, but Emily's as well. The clock was ticking, and I had to decide, now. Cynthia's threat hung in the air, suffocating me. I looked at Emily, her eyes wide with fear and determination. In that moment, I found my strength. "No," I said, my voice steady. "You don't get to threaten me anymore. Cynthia, I'm not afraid of you." Bradley stepped forward, his face a mask of desperation. "Laura, please, we can work this out. I'll end things with Amber, I swear." I laughed bitterly. "End things? Bradley, you've been seeing her for over a year. You moved us here to be closer to her, didn't you?" His silence was all the confirmation I needed. "I trusted you," I continued, my voice breaking. "I gave up everything for you, my career, my friends, my life in the city, and this is how you repay me?" Emily squeezed my hand, her voice small but fierce. "Mom, we don't need them. We can make it on our own." Cynthia scoffed. "Don't be ridiculous. You have nothing without us. No money, no home, no future. Think about Emily's education, Laura. Are you really willing to throw that away?" I felt the weight of her words, the fear of an uncertain future. But then I remembered all the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, all the times I'd felt small and insignificant in this house. I thought of Emily, forced to keep her father's secret. "We'll manage," I said, straightening my spine. "We've done it before. We'll do it again." Bradley's face hardened. "If you walk out that door, don't expect any help from me. I'll fight you for custody. I'll make sure you don't get a penny." "Dad," Emily cried, shock and hurt etched on her face. I felt a surge of rage. "You'd do that to your own daughter, after everything you've put her through?" "He's bluffing," Cynthia interjected, her voice sickly sweet. "Bradley, darling, you don't mean that. We can work this out as a family." But I saw the truth in Bradley's eyes. He'd choose his mother and his mistress over us. He always had. "Emily," I said, turning to my daughter, "this is your choice, too. If you want to stay with your father, I'll understand." Emily's eyes flashed with anger. "Are you kidding, after what he did, after what they both did?" She glared at Bradley and Cynthia. "I'm going with Mom." Pride swelled in my chest. My brave, beautiful girl. "Fine," Bradley spat. "Leave. But don't come crawling back when you can't make it on your own." I turned to face him, years of pent-up frustration pouring out. "You know what, Bradley? I was successful before I met you. I built a career, a life, and I'll do it again, without you." I grabbed Emily's hand and headed for the door. As I reached for the handle, Cynthia's voice stopped me. "If you leave now, you'll regret it for the rest of your life," she hissed. "You're nothing without this family." I turned back, meeting her gaze. "No, Cynthia, I was nothing with this family, but not anymore." With that, I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air, Emily by my side. As we walked to the car, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The road ahead would be hard, but for the first time in years, I felt free. We drove in silence for a while, the enormity of what we'd done settling over us. Then Emily spoke, her voice small in the darkness. "Mom, what are we going to do now?" I gripped the steering wheel, my mind racing. We had no home, little money, and an uncertain future. But we had each other, and that was a start. "I don't know, sweetie," I admitted, "but we'll figure it out together." As the lights of our old town faded in the rearview mirror, I felt a mix of terror and exhilaration. We were starting over, just the two of us against the world. It wouldn't be easy, but as I glanced at Emily's determined face, I knew we'd make it. The road stretched out before us, dark and unknown. But for the first time in years, I felt hope. Whatever came next, we'd face it head on. Together. The key turned in the lock of my old apartment, and I pushed open the door with a mixture of trepidation and hope. Emily stepped in behind me, her eyes wide as she took in the dusty furniture and bare walls. "It's small," she said, her voice echoing in the empty space. I nodded, swallowing the lump in my throat. "It is, but it's ours." We spent the next few days cleaning, unpacking the few belongings we'd managed to grab before leaving. It was hard work, but with each box we emptied, each room we made livable, I felt a sense of pride growing. We were rebuilding, one small step at a time. On our third night in the apartment, as we sat on the floor eating takeout, my phone rang. It was Bradley. "Laura," his voice was strained. "Please, can we talk about this? I made a mistake, but we can fix it. Come home." I closed my eyes, feeling the pull of familiarity, the temptation of an easier path. But then I looked at Emily, her face set in determination as she arranged our meager belongings, and I found my strength. "No, Bradley, this is our home now. You made your choice," he sighed, his voice turning cold. "Fine, but don't expect any help from me. You're on your own." As I hung up, Emily looked at me, worry etched on her face. "Was that Dad? What did he say?" I pulled her close, kissing the top of her head. "Nothing important, sweetie. We're going to be okay." The next morning I woke early, determination coursing through me. I had a plan. I called my old boss, swallowing my pride as I explained my situation. To my surprise, she was sympathetic. "Laura, we've missed you. There's a position opening up next month. It's not as senior as your old role, but it's a start. Are you interested?" Tears of relief sprang to my eyes. "Yes, absolutely. Thank you." With that piece of good news, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. We could do this. We would do this. The weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity. I threw myself into preparing for my new job, while helping Emily adjust to her new school. It wasn't easy. There were nights when I lay awake, terrified of the future, missing the comfort of my old life. But each morning I'd wake up and face the day with renewed determination. One evening, as Emily and I were cooking dinner in our tiny kitchen, there was a knock at the door. I opened it to find my parents standing there, arms laden with groceries and home-cooked meals. "Mom? Dad?" I stammered, shocked to see them. My mother pulled me into a fierce hug. "We're here to help, sweetheart. Whatever you need." As they bustled around our apartment, filling it with warmth and love, I felt the last pieces of my heart mending. We weren't alone in this. Months passed, and slowly but surely we found our rhythm. Emily thrived in her new school, making friends and excelling in her studies. I threw myself into my work, rediscovering the passion and drive I'd forgotten I had. One sunny Saturday, as Emily and I walked through the park near our apartment, she turned to me, her face serious. "Mom, are you happy? Do you ever regret leaving?" I paused, considering her question. I thought about the struggles we'd faced, the nights I'd cried myself to sleep, but I also thought about the strength we'd found, the bond between us that had only grown stronger. "No, sweetie," I said, squeezing her hand. "I don't regret it. It's been hard, but we're building something beautiful here. Together." She smiled, a real genuine smile that lit up her whole face. "I'm glad we left. I'm proud of us, Mom." As we continued our walk, the sun warm on our faces, I felt a sense of peace settle over me. The road ahead would still have its challenges, but we were ready to face them. We had each other, and that was enough. Bradley and Cynthia were wrong. We weren't nothing without them. We were everything, strong, resilient, and full of love. And as I looked at my daughter, her head held high, and her steps confident, I knew that we had already won the most important battle of all. We had found ourselves again, and this time, no one could take that away from us. I stared at the email on Greg's computer, my heart pounding in my chest. The words on the screen seemed to blur together, but one phrase stood out like a neon sign: financial deceit. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the exchange between Greg and his sister, Lydia. A sinking feeling settled in the pit of my stomach. "Greg," I called out, my voice wavering. "Can you come here for a minute?" He appeared in the doorway, his brow furrowed. "What's wrong, Char?" I swiveled the laptop towards him, the incriminating email displayed prominently. "Care to explain this?" Greg's face paled as he scanned the contents. "It's not what you think," he stammered, running a hand through his thinning hair. "This is for the family." I let out a bitter laugh. "For the family? Or for Lydia's latest scheme?" I stood up, my chair scraping against the hardwood floor. "How could you do this behind my back, Greg? After everything we've built together?" He held up his hands defensively. "Char, you know how Lydia gets. She was in a tight spot, and I couldn't just turn my back on her." "So you decided to betray my trust instead?" I shook my head, feeling the sting of tears in my eyes. "How much did you give her this time?" Greg averted his gaze, his jaw clenched. 70,000. The air seemed to leave my lungs. $70,000, our hard-earned savings, meant for our future and our daughter Ellie's education. All funneled into Lydia's bottomless pit of financial irresponsibility. "Mom? Dad? What's going on?" Ellie's voice startled me, and I turned to see her standing in the hallway, her backpack slung over one shoulder. At 20 years old, she was wise beyond her years, and I could see the concern etched on her face. "It's nothing, honey," Greg said, forcing a smile. "Just a little family misunderstanding." I opened my mouth to protest, but the doorbell rang, cutting me off. Greg shot me a warning look before heading to answer it. Moments later, Lydia breezed into the room, her perfectly coiffed hair and designer clothes a stark contrast to the turmoil she was causing. "Charlotte, darling," she exclaimed, air-kissing my cheek. "I'm so glad you're both here. We have a bit of a situation." I tensed, my hands balling into fists at my sides. "You don't say." Lydia's gaze flickered between Greg and me, her perfectly painted lips curling into a smirk. Now, let's not get ahead of ourselves. This is a family matter, after all." As she launched into her latest sob story, I felt a surge of determination rise within me. I had been complacent for too long, allowing Greg and Lydia's manipulations to dictate the course of our lives. But not anymore. This time, I would stand my ground and protect what mattered most, my family's future and my own sense of self-worth. The battle lines had been drawn, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. Lydia's words hung in the air like a noxious cloud, seeping into every corner of the room. "This is for Greg's future, too," she insisted, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against the arm of the sofa. I fought the urge to roll my eyes. Of course, she would try to spin this as some noble act, a sacrifice for the greater good of the family. But I knew better. This was just another one of her schemes, and Greg had fallen for it hook, line, and sinker. "Stop with the lies, Lydia," I said, my voice low and steady. "I know about the emails. The money? Ellie shifted uncomfortably beside me, her gaze darting between Greg and me. I could see the confusion and hurt etched on her face, and my heart ached for her. She didn't deserve to be caught in the crossfire of this mess. Greg cleared his throat, his eyes pleading with me to let it go. Char, let's not do this in front of Ellie. No, I said firmly. She deserves to know the truth. I turned to my daughter, taking her hand in mine. Your father has been funneling money from our joint savings account to cover Lydia's gambling debts. Ellie's eyes widened, and she looked at Greg in disbelief. Is this true? Greg opened his mouth, but Lydia cut him off. It's not as simple as that, Ellie, she said, her voice dripping with false sympathy. I made some poor choices, yes, but your father was only trying to help me get back on my feet. I scoffed. By taking $70,000 from our family's future? Without even consulting me? Lydia waved a dismissive hand. Details, details. The important thing is that we're family, and family looks out for each other. I could feel my blood boiling, my carefully cultivated composure cracking. Family doesn't manipulate and lie to each other, I spat. Family doesn't betray each other's trust for their own selfish gain. Greg flinched at my words, but Lydia remained unfazed. You're being dramatic, Charlotte, she said, her lips curling into a condescending smile. Greg was just trying to do the right thing. The right thing, I echoed, my voice rising. The right thing would have been to come clean with me from the start. The right thing would have been to let you face the consequences of your actions instead of enabling you. Lydia's eyes narrowed, and for a moment her mask of false concern slipped, revealing the entitled, manipulative woman beneath. You're one to talk about consequences, she hissed. You've been living a life of luxury off Greg's hard work for years. I recoiled as if she had slapped me. How dare you? I sputtered. I've been the one holding this family together, working my ass off to provide for us, while Greg was off chasing get-rich-quick schemes with you. The room fell silent, the weight of my words hanging in the air. Greg looked stricken, his face ashen, while Ellie stared at her father with a mixture of disappointment and disbelief. Lydia, however, simply shrugged. Whatever helps you sleep at night, dear sister-in-law, she said, rising to her feet. Just remember, blood is thicker than water, and you'll need us more than you think. With that parting shot, she sauntered out of the room, leaving a trail of tension and betrayal in her wake. I sank back onto the couch, suddenly drained. Greg reached out to me, but I flinched away from his touch. Char, please, he pleaded. Let me explain. But I had heard enough explanations, enough excuses. The truth was laid bare before me, and it was a bitter pill to swallow. My husband, the man I had trusted with my heart and my future, had betrayed me in the worst possible way. And as I looked into Ellie's eyes, brimming with unshed tears, I knew that I couldn't let this stand. It was time to take control of my life, to protect what mattered most. The gloves were off, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine, with or without Greg by my side. The silence that followed Lydia's departure was deafening, the weight of her parting words hanging heavy in the air. I could feel the anger and hurt swirling within me, threatening to boil over. How could you betray our trust like this, Greg? I asked, my voice trembling with barely contained emotion. Our future? Ellie's future? Greg ran a hand over his face, his shoulders slumped in defeat. It's complicated, Char, he said, his tone pleading. You don't understand the pressure I'm under. I let out a bitter laugh. The pressure? From your manipulative sister, you mean? I shook my head in disbelief. That's no excuse, Greg. We're supposed to be partners, a team. But instead, you've been lying to me, stealing from our family's future to enable Lydia's reckless behavior. Ellie shifted uncomfortably beside me, her eyes downcast. I could only imagine the turmoil she must be feeling, caught in the crossfire of her parents' crumbling marriage. Greg's gaze flickered to our daughter, and I could see the guilt etched on his face. I never meant for it to go this far, he said, his voice strained. Lydia just kept needing more and more, and I couldn't turn my back on her. She's family. And what am I, Greg? I shot back, my voice rising. Just some inconvenient obstacle in your twisted idea of family loyalty? He flinched at my words, but I pressed on, the dam of emotions finally bursting forth. I've been the one holding this family together, working my ass off to provide for us while you were off chasing get-rich-quick schemes with Lydia. And this is how you repay me? By betraying my trust? jeopardizing our daughter's future? Greg opened his mouth to respond, but I held up a hand, cutting him off. Save it, I said, my voice low and steady. I'm done with the excuses, the lies. You've made your choice, Greg, and it's clear where your loyalties lie. I turned to Ellie, my heart aching at the sight of her distress. Honey, I'm so sorry you've been caught up in this mess, I said, taking her hand in mine. But I promise you, I'm going to make things right, no matter what it takes. Ellie nodded, her eyes shimmering with unshed tears. I know, Mom, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. I trust you. Those simple words were like a balm to my wounded soul, reminding me of what truly mattered, the love and trust of my daughter, the one person who had stood by me through it all. I squeezed her hand, drawing strength from her unwavering support. Then I turned back to Greg, my resolve hardening like steel. You have one chance to come clean, Greg, I said, my voice leaving no room for negotiation. Tell me everything, every scheme, every lie, every penny you've funneled to Lydia, and maybe, just maybe, we can start to rebuild some semblance of trust. Greg's eyes widened, and for a moment I thought I saw a flicker of hope in his gaze. But then his expression hardened, and he shook his head. I can't, he said, his voice barely audible. Lydia, she needs me. In that moment, I knew our marriage was well and truly over. The man I had loved, the partner I had trusted, was gone, replaced by a shell of a person, trapped in Lydia's web of manipulation and deceit. But as I looked at Ellie, her hands still clasped in mine, I knew that I had to be strong, for her sake and for my own. The storm was brewing, and I was ready to weather it, no matter the cost. I stared at the computer screen, my eyes burning from the countless hours spent poring over financial records and email trails. The evidence was damning, a twisted web of deceit spun by Greg and Lydia that threatened to unravel everything I had worked so hard to build. A soft knock on the door jolted me from my thoughts. Come in, I called out, quickly minimizing the windows on my screen. Mariana, my trusted colleague and mentor, stepped into the office, her warm smile a welcome respite from the storm raging within me. Charlotte, you look like you could use a break, she said, her voice laced with concern. I let out a weary sigh, running a hand through my disheveled hair. I'm fine, Mariana, just trying to make sense of this mess. Her brow furrowed as she took in my haggard appearance. This is about more than work, isn't it? She asked gently. I hesitated for a moment, unsure of how much to reveal. But Mariana had been a constant source of wisdom and support throughout my career, and I knew I could trust her. It's Greg, I confessed, the words tumbling out in a rush. He's been funneling money to his sister, Lydia, behind my back. Thousands of dollars, gone, just to enable her reckless behavior. Mariana's eyes widened, and she sank into the chair across from me. Oh, Charlotte, she murmured, her voice heavy with sympathy. I'm so sorry. I shook my head, blinking back tears of frustration. I've just been so blind, Mariana. How could I not see what was happening right under my nose? She reached across the desk, her warm hand covering mine in a comforting gesture. You're not to blame, dear, she said firmly. The fault lies with those who betrayed your trust. Her words struck a chord within me, and I felt a flicker of resolve ignite in my chest. She was right. I was the victim here, not the perpetrator. Greg and Lydia had made their choices, and it was time for me to make mine. What if I can't piece it all back together, Mariana? I asked, my voice trembling with uncertainty. What if the damage is too deep, too irreparable? Mariana's gaze was steady, her eyes shining with a wisdom born of experience. Charlotte, you are stronger than you think, she said, her voice gentle but unwavering. Don't let them drag you down. You have the power to rise above this, to forge your own path. Her words resonated within me, igniting a flame of determination that burned away the doubt and fear that had been weighing me down. I was Charlotte Emerson, a force to be reckoned with, a woman who had built a successful career and a loving family through sheer grit and resilience. And I would not let Greg and Lydia's betrayal define me. As if sensing my newfound resolve, Mariana gave my hand a gentle squeeze. Whatever you decide, know that you have my support, she said, a warm smile spreading across her face. You are not alone in this. I returned her smile, feeling a weight lift from my shoulders. Thank you, Mariana, I said, my voice thick with emotion. I don't know what I'd do without you. She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Nonsense, my dear. You'd find a way to conquer the world, with or without me. Her words ignited a spark of laughter within me, and for the first time in days, I felt a glimmer of hope. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but with allies like Mariana by my side, I knew I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. As Mariana rose to leave, I felt a newfound sense of clarity wash over me. Greg had made his choice, and now it was time for me to make mine. No more excuses, no more lies. I would uncover the truth, no matter how painful, and chart my own course forward. The facade had crumbled, and I was ready to embrace the reality that lay beneath. A reality where I, Charlotte Emerson, was the master of my own destiny. The weight of the evidence in my hands felt like a lead anchor, dragging me deeper into the murky depths of betrayal. But I knew I couldn't turn back now, not when the truth was finally within my grasp. "Charlotte, what's going on?" Margaret's voice cut through the tension, her brow furrowed with concern. "This infighting is tearing us apart." I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the confrontation ahead. "Ron, Margaret, you need to know what Greg and Lydia have done." Greg's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth to protest, but I held up a hand, silencing him. This was my moment, my chance to lay bare the tangled web of lies that had ensnared our family. "For years, Greg has been funneling money from our joint savings to cover Lydia's debts," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor of anger coursing through me. "Thousands upon thousands of dollars siphoned away without my knowledge or consent." Margaret gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, while Ron's expression hardened into a mask of stoic disapproval. "Is this true?" he demanded, his gaze boring into Greg and Lydia. Lydia, ever the master manipulator, was the first to respond. "Daddy, you know how these things can spiral out of control," she simpered, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. "I made some poor choices, but Greg was only trying to help me get back on my feet." I scoffed, shaking my head in disbelief. "Don't buy into her lies, Ron," I said, my voice laced with contempt. "She's been playing you both for fools, using Greg's misguided sense of loyalty to bleed us dry." From the corner of my eye, I saw Greg flinch, his shoulders slumping in defeat. He knew the jig was up, his carefully constructed facade crumbling under the weight of the truth. "Charlotte's right," he mumbled, his voice barely audible. "I should have been honest from the start, but Lydia, she just kept needing more and more." Lydia's mask of innocence slipped, her eyes narrowing into slits of fury. "You spineless worm," she hissed, rounding on Greg. "After everything I've done for you, this is how you repay me?" The room descended into chaos, with Margaret sobbing and Ron bellowing for order. In the midst of the pandemonium, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. The storm had finally broken, and the truth lay bare before us all. "Enough!" I shouted, my voice cutting through the din like a knife. "This ends now, Lydia." All eyes turned to me, and I could feel the weight of their collective gaze pressing down upon me. But I refused to falter, drawing strength from the knowledge that I held the power in my hands. "You have one chance to take responsibility for your actions," I said, my voice low and steady. "Admit to what you've done, and we can move forward as a family." Lydia's lips curled into a sneer, her eyes glinting with defiance. "Or what, Charlotte? You'll go running to the authorities like a scared little girl?" I met her gaze unflinchingly, my resolve unwavering. "Or I expose everything to our extended family and community," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "Every lie, every scheme, every penny you've bled from us, all laid bare for the world to see." A hush fell over the room, the weight of my words hanging heavy in the air. Greg's parents looked stunned, their faces pale with shock and dismay. Lydia, however, simply laughed, a bitter, mocking sound that sent a chill down my spine. "You'll regret this, Charlotte," she spat, her voice dripping with venom. "The family will never forgive you." But as I looked around the room, taking in the faces of those I loved most, I knew that I had already won. The truth was out, and Lydia's grip on our lives was slipping. "Better to be true and alone than entangled in falsehood with company," I said, my voice ringing with conviction. In that moment, I knew that the path ahead would be arduous, fraught with pain and heartbreak. But I was ready to face the consequences of my actions, ready to forge a new path forward, free from the shackles of manipulation and deceit. The showdown had begun, and I was determined to emerge victorious, no matter the cost. Lydia's words hung in the air like a poisonous cloud, her threat reverberating through the room. "You'll regret this, Charlotte. The family will never forgive you." I met her gaze unflinchingly, my resolve hardening like steel. "Better to be true and alone than entangled in falsehood with company," I said, my voice ringing with conviction. Greg's parents exchanged a troubled glance, their faces etched with conflicting emotions. I could see the struggle playing out behind their eyes, the desire to believe their children warring with the stark reality of the truth laid bare before them. Lydia, sensing their wavering loyalty, turned on the waterworks, her eyes brimming with crocodile tears. "Mommy, Daddy, please," she simpered, her voice thick with false anguish. "You know, I would never intentionally hurt this family." But her manipulations fell on deaf ears. The evidence I had presented was damning, a mountain of financial records and email trails that left no room for doubt or excuses. Ron was the first to break the tense silence, his voice gruff with barely contained anger. "Enough of this nonsense," he growled, fixing Lydia with a steely glare. "Your sister-in-law has presented irrefutable proof of your misdeeds. It's time to face the consequences." Lydia's jaw dropped, her carefully cultivated mask of innocence shattering into 1,000 pieces. But you're supposed to be on my side," she sputtered, her eyes darting between her parents in disbelief. Margaret, her face pale and drawn, reached out to grasp her husband's hand. "We're on the side of truth, Lydia," she said, her voice trembling with a mixture of sadness and resolve. "And the truth is, you've betrayed this family's trust in the most egregious way." A hush fell over the room as the weight of Margaret's words sank in. Greg, who had remained silent throughout the confrontation, seemed to shrink into himself, his shoulders slumped in defeat. But Lydia was not one to go down without a fight. "This is all her doing," she spat, rounding on me with a venomous glare. "She's turned you against your own flesh and blood." I opened my mouth to respond, but Mariana beat me to it, her voice ringing out like a clarion call. "That's enough, Lydia," she said, her tone brooking no argument. "The only person responsible for this mess is you." Mariana's unwavering support was like a balm to my soul, and I felt a surge of gratitude towards my mentor and friend. She had been by my side from the beginning, offering wisdom and guidance when I needed it most. As if sensing my renewed strength, Lydia's bravado faltered, her eyes darting towards the door. But before she could make a move, Ron stepped forward, his expression steely. "You're cut off, Lydia," he said, his voice leaving no room for negotiation. "No more handouts, no more enabling. It's time you faced the consequences of your actions." Lydia's face contorted with rage, her carefully cultivated facade crumbling into a twisted mask of fury. "You'll regret this," she snarled, her eyes wild and unhinged. "All of you." But her threats rang hollow, her power over the family finally broken. As she stormed out of the room, slamming the door behind her, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end the truth had prevailed. And as I looked around at the faces of those who had stood by me, Mariana, Ellie, even Greg's parents, I knew that I was not alone. The road ahead would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Lydia's reign of terror was over, and I was ready to take control of my life once more. As the dust settled, I turned to Ellie, my heart swelling with pride at the strength and resilience she had shown throughout this ordeal. "It's going to be okay, honey," I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. "We're going to get through this, together." Ellie nodded, her eyes shining with a mixture of relief and admiration. "I know, Mom," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "You've shown me what it means to be truly strong." In that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, I had the courage and determination to face them head-on. With the unwavering support of my daughter and my newfound allies, I was ready to forge a new path, one free from the shackles of manipulation and deceit. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And as I looked towards the future, I felt a sense of purpose and resolve that I hadn't felt in years. It was time to take control of my destiny, once and for all. The silence that followed Lydia's dramatic exit was deafening, the weight of her actions hanging heavy in the air. But as I looked around at the faces of those who had stood by me, Mariana, Ellie, even Greg's parents, I felt a sense of relief wash over me. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a newfound sense of peace and resolve had taken root. Mom? Ellie's voice broke the stillness, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and admiration. I'm so proud of you. You've shown me what it means to be truly strong. Her words struck a chord deep within me, and I felt a surge of emotion welling up in my chest. Through all the turmoil and heartbreak, Ellie had been my constant, a beacon of love and support that had guided me through the darkest of times. Ellie, I said, pulling her into a tight embrace. Anything I do for us. Love is our true wealth, and as long as we have that, we'll be okay. She nodded, her arms tightening around me. And in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, as a united front. A soft cough drew my attention back to the others in the room, and I turned to see Greg hovering uncertainly in the doorway. His eyes were downcast, his shoulders slumped in defeat, and for a fleeting moment I felt a pang of pity for the man I had once loved. "Char," he began, his voice barely above a whisper. "I know I've made mistakes, unforgivable mistakes, but please, let me try to make things right." I studied him for a long moment, weighing his words against the weight of his betrayal. Part of me yearned for the easy path, the chance to salvage what was left of our marriage and move on with our lives. But a deeper, more primal part of me knew that it was too late for reconciliation. The trust had been shattered, the foundation of our relationship irreparably damaged by his lies and deceit. "I'm sorry, Greg," I said, my voice steady despite the tremor of emotion coursing through me. "But it's too late for apologies. You made your choice when you chose to stand by Lydia, even after everything she put us through." He flinched as if I had struck him, his eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Please, Char," he pleaded, taking a step towards me. "I'll do anything, just give me another chance." But I held up a hand, stopping him in his tracks. "No, Greg," I said, my voice ringing with finality. "It's over. I can't keep living in the shadow of your lies, constantly wondering when the next betrayal will come." Ellie shifted beside me, her hand finding mine and giving it a gentle squeeze. Her silent support was all the strength I needed to forge ahead, to sever the ties that had bound me to a life of manipulation and deceit. "It's time for me to take control of my life," I said, my gaze sweeping over Greg and his parents, who had remained silent witnesses to our exchange. "I'm done being a victim. It's done being taken for granted and underappreciated." Greg opened his mouth as if to protest, but I cut him off with a shake of my head. "This is my moment, Greg," I said, my voice laced with a newfound sense of determination. "My chance to forge a new path, one free from the shackles of your sister's toxic influence." A flicker of resignation passed over his features, and he nodded slowly, his shoulders slumping in defeat. "I understand," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "I just hope you can find it in your heart to forgive me someday." I said nothing, my silence speaking volumes. Forgiveness was a luxury I couldn't afford, not when the wounds of his betrayal were still so raw and fresh. As Greg turned and left, his footsteps echoing hollowly in the stillness, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. The storm had passed, and in its wake, a newfound sense of clarity had taken root. It was time to start building a new chapter, one brick at a time. With Ellie by my side and the unwavering support of my newfound allies, I knew that I had the strength to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The road would be long and arduous, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope, a beacon of light cutting through the darkness that had threatened to consume me. As I looked around at the familiar surroundings of my home, I felt a sense of purpose and determination wash over me. This was my sanctuary, my safe haven, and I was ready to reclaim it as my own. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. And as I turned to face the future, I knew that I would emerge stronger, wiser, and more resilient than ever before. It was time to take control of my destiny, once and for all. The gentle hum of conversation and laughter filled the air, a stark contrast to the tumultuous events that had preceded this moment. As I surveyed the crowd gathered for the community celebration, I couldn't help but marvel at the transformation that had taken place, not just in my own life, but in the lives of those around me. "Look at you now, Charlotte." Mariana's voice broke through my reverie, her warm smile a familiar comfort. "You've come such a long way." I returned her smile, feeling a swell of gratitude for the unwavering support she had shown me throughout this journey. "I couldn't have done it without you, Mariana." I said, my voice thick with emotion. You were there for me when I needed it most. She waved a dismissive hand, her eyes twinkling with mischief. Nonsense, my dear. You had the strength within you all along. I merely helped you see it. As I looked around at the familiar faces mingling and chatting, I couldn't help but feel a sense of pride and accomplishment. These were the people who had stood by me, offering their support and encouragement when the world seemed to be crumbling around me. Mom? Ellie's voice drew my attention, and I turned to see her beaming at me, her eyes shining with a mixture of pride and affection. We're going to be just fine, aren't we? I pulled her into a tight embrace, savoring the moment of connection with my daughter, the one constant in a world that had been turned upside down. Yes, honey, I murmured, my voice thick with emotion. We're going to be more than fine. As I held her close, I couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought us to this point. The betrayal, the heartbreak, the struggle to reclaim control of my life. It had all been worth it, if only to reach this moment of clarity and peace. Charlotte! A voice called out, and I turned to see Margaret and Ron making their way towards us, their faces etched with genuine warmth and affection. We're so proud of you, dear, Margaret said, pulling me into a gentle embrace. You've shown such strength and resilience through all of this. Ron nodded in agreement, his eyes shining with a mixture of admiration and regret. We should have seen the truth sooner, he said, his voice gruff with emotion. But you never gave up, and for that, you have our eternal gratitude. I felt a lump form in my throat, overwhelmed by the outpouring of support from these two people who had once been so deeply entangled in Lydia's web of deceit. Thank you, I managed, my voice barely above a whisper. It means more than you know. As the evening wore on, I found myself surrounded by a network of allies and supporters, colleagues, friends, and even members of the community who had rallied behind me in my darkest hour. Their words of encouragement and admiration buoyed my spirits, reminding me of the incredible journey I had undertaken and the obstacles I had overcome. And through it all, Ellie remained by my side, a constant source of strength and inspiration. Her unwavering belief in me had been the fuel that kept me going, even when the path ahead seemed shrouded in darkness. As the celebration drew to a close, I found myself standing on the periphery, watching as the crowd dispersed and the lights dimmed. A sense of peace washed over me, a feeling of contentment and closure that I hadn't experienced in years. The road ahead was still uncertain, but for the first time in a long time, I felt truly ready to embrace whatever challenges lay ahead. With the support of my newfound allies and the love of my daughter, I knew that I had the strength and resilience to forge a new path, one built on the foundations of truth, integrity, and self-worth. As I turned to leave, Mariana's words echoed in my mind. Look at you now, Charlotte. You've come such a long way. And in that moment, I knew that she was right. I had come a long way, further than I could have ever imagined. But the journey was far from over, and with each step forward, I felt a newfound sense of purpose and determination. The echoes of betrayal had faded, replaced by the resounding chorus of hope and possibility. And as I looked towards the horizon, I knew that the best was yet to come.